Thank you for joining us at Hope for Our Times. And today, listen, we have an absolutely fascinating conversation with my good friend Mondo Gonzales. And Mondo is someone I always enjoy talking with because of his knowledge of Bible prophecy, biblical archaeology, plus the history and geography of Israel, and his ability to bring all of those things together to make them connect. And in this conversation, we're going to dig into the red heifers, the coming temple, which may be soon, and some remarkable preparations that are taking place in Israel even right now. These aren't just theories about what might happen someday, but there are real people making real preparations at this very moment. And when you begin looking at how these pieces fit together with Bible prophecy, it certainly gets your attention. However, before we get into this conversation, I want to quickly let you know about something special that's happening right now at the Hope for Our Times online store. And for a limited time, we are offering 80% off books and DVDs. And if there are resources that you've been wanting to pick up for yourself, your family, or to share with someone else, this is a great opportunity. But don't wait, because the sale won't last forever. So be sure to check that out at hopeforourtimes.com. Well, with that, let's get into this conversation with Mondo. What does it mean? How close could we be? And most importantly, why this matters. And as always, we'll compare this with God's word to better understand the times that we are living in and the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And please like, subscribe, and share as we combat the lies with the truth. Mondo, thank you for joining me today. And listen, as I mentioned, everybody, it's going to be a fabulous program. Are you ready to just get right into it?
Always ready, Tom. Trying to live up to expectations.
Okay, well, you know what? It's just great having you as a friend and as a colleague, and I appreciate all that you are doing at Prophecy Watchers. And I know that you have all different kinds of guests on there, which is fabulous. Challenges everybody in their thinking, and what a blessing it is. Okay, Mondo, you are known as one of the key figures in writing about the red heifer and the coming temple and what's going on with the Temple Mount. I want to get into that, and I also want to get into one of my favorite subjects, because I believe you actually have studied in Israel regarding archaeology. So I have a lot of questions I want to ask you. So I find archaeology off the charts, but let's just start with the Temple Mount. It's a big deal. Let's talk about what is the prophetic significance of the Temple Mount and some current developments that you know that might be happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that the history of the Temple Mount is certainly has come back on the stage of trouble and conflict, I guess. It's interesting too that no doubt, if we look historically, the temple that Jesus was visited, and no doubt was part of the Herodian Temple Mount complex that he expanded on. And so, fast forward to now, where the Jews are back in the land, 1967 on. That's kind of old news for us now, but it's becoming another hotbed of change, because enter in, I would say, Netanyahu's recent government in December of 2022. When he was forced, in many ways, in establishing a government in Israel. It's a little bit different the way their government and their is set up than ours, but you have to come together with a coalition of different groups, and so this particular coalition is the most religious coalition in the history of Israel, and so that included one figure named Itamar Ben-Gvir. And so on the first day of this new coalition back in December of 22, he is the national security minister. He went right up on the Temple Mount, and to kind of show that he was not going to back down. And so over the past few years now, he has pretty much unilaterally sought to change the status quo of the Temple Mount. And so we know that the goal is, of course, for them to build a temple there, a third temple, which we know not only from the Bible, but we know church history taught that, or especially early church history, that there was going to be another temple in Jerusalem. And so over the past few, really, I would say few months, they've talked not only about just changing the status quo, but of building a synagogue there and making it a multicultural thing. And so that has changed step by step, this idea, because they're trying to modify that. And just on Jerusalem Day last month, Ben Gvir went up there. He has a flag. And so he's in charge of the police. So because he's the national security minister, so now it's changed. It's different than what it was under previous administrations, where he's able to go up there. They're able to pray. They're able to sing. They're bowing down, where before they were not allowed to do that at all. There was some pressure from the chief rabbinic office of not encouraging Jews to go up there. Well, they've overcome that. He's an Orthodox Jew, Ben Gvir, and so they're rebuffing the rabbis' views, and now they're changing the political situation up there. And so this is all part of the prophetic developments, which we fully expect will happen.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to watch, and as we also look at the Islamic world, it was coming out of Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states, some of the Arab states. We were reading these reports as of a few years back that, hey, the Temple Mount isn't really a thing for the Muslims. Now, you obviously have two different groups of Muslims, and they're not agreeing over the Temple Mount, but we're seeing more and more Muslims say that's not important. Jerusalem to Islam is not that important.
Oh, 100%. And this is where, before October 7th, you had rumors being floated by Saudi Arabia, which of course Saudi Arabia is basically the holder of Mecca and Medina and really the foundation of Islam. But they were describing quite clearly about maybe they would be willing to take over custodianship from Jordan. That was given after the Six-Day War in 67, that they would take over custodianship and that they would allow it to be more of a multi-faith situation, which I think in one sense, I wonder what Israel will do with that, in that if it's a path to get to where they have a presence on the Temple Mount, I think they might take it. There's no doubt within Orthodox Judaism, of course, they despise Christianity. We know that. And they obviously despise Islam in that way. But if you could have a step where you would have maybe a church in that corner, a synagogue in that corner, of course, the mosque is already there, the Alaska Mosque, they might take that as a step to possibly building something permanent there. But just recently as well, it has come up again with the remove the custodianship from Jordan. And they have protested and protested, but Jordan's a small player in all this. So their opinion probably won't matter as much in the Islamic world.
It's also so very fascinating. There was a document that was produced in 1927, so when it was published by the Supreme Muslim Council. I know you're very well aware of it. Mm-hmm. And it was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who was the president of the Supreme Muslim Council at the time. And right in there, his own words, he said, no doubt Solomon's temple was right here. And he also says in this, and folks, this is the same Muslim leader that counseled Hitler on how to kill Jews. Yet he said Solomon's temple's there. And he even said, he was talking about the gold dome that's there, the Dome of the Rock. He said, Islam is occupying the Temple Mount. He used the word occupy. But you don't hear about any of that. So it's interesting looking at what's going on right now, this change. It's just so fascinating to me. All right, let's shift another gear. Israel's rebirth and the generation question. There's different thoughts on what that generation is. I know I have mine, and I'm curious as to what yours are. But was 1948, in your mind, the beginning of the prophetic clock?
I would say 100% yes, because there's no doubt that when we look back and look at not all, but a significant majority of the prophecies that we understand the end of the age to be, they revolve around the 70th week of Daniel. And they pretty much focus on what we understand in the Olivet Discourse, again, this time period from Jesus' perspective. Well, you can't have a 70th week of Daniel without Israel being in the land, for sure. And so when Israel came back, again, in a shocking, surprising way, as Ezekiel 36, 37, 38 all describe, clearly if you take it straightforward. And it's also something that Blackstone and Clarence Larkin and others in the late 1800s, before Israel was even on a radar blip, they clearly said, this is going to happen. We don't know how, but Israel is going to be restored to their land. And so when you take the Bible in a straightforward way, it happened. And so when it happened in 1948, there's no doubt everybody was like, wow, this is what the scripture says, and now it's here. And so I think as it from 1948 on, that to me is the end of the age. Now, whether a generation, we could talk about what that means or what it might not mean and different things, but nevertheless, 1948 started the end of the age in my view.
Yeah, I see it the same way. I think, there's many pastors that will say 1948 is not significant. I mean, the teaching coming out of Christianity now is really unfortunate when it comes to the nation of Israel. But they'll say 1948 wasn't that significant. But I think the devil knows it was extremely significant. Even if pastors and people who go to church deny it, no, the devil knows. And it's okay. Moving on from there, we look at the talk regarding Israel, and we see it's in the Olivet Discourse. Jesus gives several different signs. There will be lawlessness will abound. The love of many will grow cold. There will be wars and rumors of wars, and kingdom against nation, and so forth. We have all these different signs. There will be the abomination of desolation. And then Jesus says in all three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, a little bit different wording as each of them are written, but basically, this generation will not cease. The generation that sees these things. Now, I read this and think, okay, Jesus is given a list of signs, and he does say some things in plurality. He brings in the image of the fig tree, and this generation shall not pass, is how it's worded. What does that thought mean? And I know there's different thoughts on this. I'll give my opinion in a minute of what I think it is, but what is this generation? Does it mean the generation that sees Israel established again in 1948? Can we count a number of years? Is it 1967? Or is it more the generation that sees all these things happening at the same time while Israel's a nation again?
This is the classic question that comes up, and it leads to a variety of viewpoints. And this is why some people, they created, partial preterist or even preterism, because they needed it to be the generation of Jesus' day, which ended in 70 AD with the destruction. But I think over and over, as Jesus, as you just mentioned, he outlines all of these signs that are primarily dealing with what we understand to be the 7th week of Daniel or the tribulation period. In Matthew 24, verse 9, he says, you're going to have tribulation. Okay, so he uses the word. And then in 24, 22, 23, and 24, he describes great tribulation. And so there's no doubt both halves of this period, with the abomination of desolation as the center, you have the word tribulation being used of both before that happens, which we believe is the midpoint, and after. So this is where we get the idea of a 7-year tribulation, because the word is used for both parts. But the description that he's giving, I don't think he gives even a specific description of Israel becoming a nation in 1948. We could talk about what the fig tree, there's different viewpoints on that, but because in the Luke passage, he says, and all trees. And so he wasn't specifically referring only to the fig tree, even though I know fig tree was used of Israel, but I think it's a little broader than that. So, but if we keep it in context, Jesus is saying that the generation that sees these things, which are the whole sequence of events of the tribulation period, they will not pass. Because the challenge is that if you look at the word generation, we know that I'll say it this way. What's the biblical definition of generation? Well, I can prove from Psalm 90 and other passages that a generation is 40 years. Well, I can prove that there was 42 generations between Abraham and Jesus in Matthew chapter 1. Well, if you divide that out by the years, that's 52.8 years. Well, what about a generation that's 70 years, a generation that's 80 years in the Bible? What about Genesis 6? a generation's 120. So which biblical view of generation are you going to choose? And this is where we get it kind of funny is, well, a generation's 40 years. Well, 1948 plus 40 is 1988. 88 reasons why Jesus came back. Well, that didn't happen. Oh, well, maybe it's 1967. They had 40 years. Now you get 2007. That means that's it. The tribulation starts in the year 2000. Perfect timing, 2,000 years. So all of those, I think, fail because all of them are biblical. Again, 120, that puts us really far out from 1948. Nobody's going to choose that one. But I think within the context, over and over, Jesus is saying, look at the signs. He says, when you see these signs, what does he say? You'll know that he's at the door. So this admonishment to look for the signs, I think is over and over, is those specific signs, knowing that you're at the end, you're at the door. That's referring to the 7 years. So he's saying, hey, look, this is not going to go on forever. In fact, he uses a time marker and saying, unless this time was shortened to 7, no flesh would live. And so I think the generation that begins to see these things, which he told them to watch for, he's like, don't worry, it's not going to pass before all of this is fulfilled. It's not going to go on forever. That'd be my short answer.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And going back to, it doesn't say, Jesus never said Israel will be a nation again. In that context, don't misunderstand me, everybody. In the context of Olivet Discourse, he did not say that, but he did give some other key indicators about Israel being gathered back at that time when he said, when you see the abomination of desolation, which will lead us to the next question and the book that's behind you, when you see the abomination of desolation take place that Daniel spoke of. So we know that is speaking of Antichrist, and there's going to be a temple that's going to be built again in Jerusalem. And then there's the warning from Jesus to flee Judea. So we know he's talking about Jerusalem. The people are there. We know from various passages, Israel will be gathered together as a nation again. Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 23, you will not see me again until you say, he's talking to the Jews in Jerusalem, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, being specific to, you won't see me in Jerusalem again. I'm not coming back until then, which connects with Hosea chapter 5. So we get it, but he's not specific to that. And in that, the generation, I wholeheartedly agree because I hear so many other interpretations on it. And this is just a reminder for all of our viewers. Jesus specifically says, when you look at Luke chapter 21, he says, talking about the fig tree, he says, assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. All plural, and all three Gospels is plural language that Jesus uses, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John doesn't have the Olivet Discourse, but the Synoptic Gospels do. All these things is plural, all converging, which also, when Jesus says in Luke 21, verse 28, I think it is, when you see these things begin to take place, look up and lift up your head because your redemption draws near. Again, is plural. Okay, so in that, abomination of desolation is part of that conversation in Olivet Discourse. You have a book on the red heifer behind you. There's been another red heifer that has been birthed. There's talk of a third temple that's coming. Not every single Jew talks about a third temple that's coming. So let's start here, and a lot to work through. But before we even go to the red heifer, first of all, how can people connect with you, Mondo? I forgot to ask you that earlier.
Yeah, if you go to prophecywatchers.com and you can go and see where to find us. We have a lot of things going on, as most people do. You know, our conferences, which you just participated in a couple weeks ago. It gives you access to our YouTube, Rumble, our magazine, Substack. We're all over the place now, and so but prophecywatchers.com is the best place to find all the different things that we're doing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. In fact, you have that conference coming up in Idaho, I think in September. I think you're in there. You're in the Coeur d'Alene area, correct?
It's actually probably about 3 hours from Coeur d'Alene. It's kind of it's in central Idaho, a very small town, very small area called Kamaya or Kamia. I'm pronouncing it wrong. I apologize. But yeah, that's coming up in September. And then, of course, we have our Branson one in December.
I look forward to being in Branson with y'all, I believe. If I'm still invited, I'll find out from Bob.
No, you're invited. You're on the list.
Yeah, and with we're in Rockwall the same weekend that you're in Idaho. So it's going to be a great prophecy weekend. But again, check out everything Mondo has. You will absolutely love everything that Mondo has. I do. I really appreciate him as both a friend and a colleague. And okay, Mondo, let's jump into it. The abomination of desolation is coming when Antichrist, he's going to demand to be worshipped as God. But you have a book on the red heifer. What is the red heifer? And then tell us, why is this significant?
Yeah, and it's significant even actually in the last few days because it was announced on the Temple Institute Facebook page, which is super important, that a new red heifer has been born in the land of Israel. And the reason why it's significant, and I wrote the book, is primarily because those who have been watching prophecy for a long time, they've always had red heifer candidates, because the red heifer in the Bible, without going into all the details, the red heifer, when it is offered in a ceremony, it is burned, the ashes are taken, and the ashes are then used to purify people, places, and things, ultimately. And so the Jewish people, the religious Jews, realized that most of them are defiled, ritually impure. And so they can't even participate fully in the temple if it was rebuilt. So they need the ashes in order to purify the people, places, and things, so that when the temple is rebuilt, all of the sacrifices can be done. Right now, theoretically, they could build the temple, theoretically, but it can only be partially utilized. So they need the ashes for that reason. Therefore, they've been searching for the maybe ancient ashes that have never been found, even though some claim that maybe they found them in Qumran and other things. But I don't think that's accepted by most consensus rabbinic views. But so they're looking for a new one. And so back in 2022, 5 of them came over, 5 at least candidates came over at one time. So that brought everything to at the forefront. I thought, man, this is coming to be. And so I thought, well, I'll write a book, or kind of write the definitive book on it, what this means, what it doesn't mean, what does it mean for Christians, what does it mean in the current political environment, for the Temple Mount, etc. And so this week, with this new red heifer being born, again, in the land of Israel, it sets it up a notch. There's no doubt Israel would rather have one born in the land than not born in the land, even though they could use one not born in the land. But this one was born through artificial insemination 9 months ago. The fascinating thing about it is they have a new, I have the name of it here, they have a new institute that just got established, the National Institute for Red Heifer Research, which is so this is full-blown now. This is something that they're doing. Well, this one particular call him a vet, he inseminated an animal basically 9 months ago, and the parents were 2 black Angus. So think about this. 2 black Angus produced this pure red heifer. Now, there's a couple other little nuggets I'll just share, which is new. This is new information that they just released this week, which I thought was pretty fascinating, because one of them was that, generally speaking, over the past few years, they said, well, a red heifer is born pure, but if it develops non-red hairs, then it becomes disqualified. Well, now they are entertaining the idea through their religious discussions that they can use electrolysis to remove, let me say it this way, if it's born pure and it later develops a few non-red hairs, they can use electrolysis to remove the hairs and it's still qualified. Well, that ups the percentage now pretty amazingly, that they could keep, if it was born pure, again, they could keep it pure. The other thing that they said was, which is new, is that they're discussing this, where, as we know, most cows get an ear tag. Well, this particular one that was born got an ear tag. Well, all of a sudden, boom, that's a blemish. Well, that was been kind of the official consensus, where now they're discussing they removed it very quickly. And so it's healing now. Because normally after a while, it scars up, right? And then it's a blemish. It's a permanent blemish because it has a permanent scar. But because they removed it within 8 days, they're saying if it heals up like we do, you could see something I made as a kid and it's gone and the scar's gone. If that happens, well, there's no blemish on it. And so they're coming up with these new ideas in this institute and this new group that they have called the Beit Midrash, where they're discussing all the halakha reasons for discussing the red heifer. So right now, it's actually the parashat reading of Numbers 19 in the Bible. So you see on the Facebook of Institute, or the Temple Institute on their Facebook, they're talking about it a lot this week because it just happens to be the time of the normal scheduled reading, which they don't choose in advance. It's just part of the cycle. And now our red heifer has been born. So they're really excited right now.
Well, that is rather fascinating. It's also interesting that they removed the tag by the 8th day. I think if circumcision was also required on the 8th day too, for particular reasons that God had instructed. This is very fascinating to me. Just as I watch this, I've been challenged by some of the red heifer talk in the past, but yet as I look at this and we look biblically, and we know that there's going to be a temple that's going to be built, and there's desperation for it. When the temple was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans, Israel the Jews in their sensitivity to not having a temple anymore, the rabbinical Judaism increased substantially. And a lot of it just went into some traditions and that are not biblical, and they are desperate to have a temple again. And so as you see it, when you're looking at the red heifer, this is a huge step, or it at least keeps the awareness there. Even if this red heifer gets disqualified or whatever, there's still this awareness that there are Jews that are looking to build the temple. And you and I have had the conversation before, not every Jew in Israel is looking to build the temple. Mm-hmm. But I've also been reading, Mondo, that there's a very large group, or it's increased exponentially with young Jews, both men and women, who are now becoming more religious in the sense of Orthodox Judaism. Doesn't mean they're coming to Yeshua. They're not coming to faith in Jesus necessarily, but there is this drive towards that, which I would think would cause them to say, with the younger generation, we need a temple built. At the same time that the younger generation here is turning against Israel, we have them looking, I'm assuming, let's get the red heifer, let's build the temple, we've got to get back. Do you see something like that developing?
Oh, 100%. And it's interesting because they'll talk about the Geulah, the time of redemption, and they're beginning to see these things. The young people, we love them. They usually want to be part of something big and large, and they want to be part of history. Who doesn't, right? And so what we're seeing there is that these convergences of these things, that again, the situation changing on the Temple Mount and red heifers being born, they're like, could it really be true that the time of the Messiah? I mean, all these external events, of course, the power of Israel as it relates to, we see with Iran and other things, the changing of the geopolitics as it relates into the land of Israel. You think about, none of us really would have predicted 3-4 years ago, especially pre October 7th. None of us would have said, oh, by the way, Israel's going to have basically mastered up Lebanon up to the Litani River. Assad's going to be out of Syria. I mean, there's going to be this massive attack in Iran. They're going to demolish this. They're going to be able to go across thousands of miles or 1,000 miles to get over there. The whole circumstance, the geopolitics of the Middle East is going to change. I don't think anybody would have said this. But the idea of the greater Israel, I'm not saying that they want to annex anything, but what they're watching is the geopolitics change. They're watching all the religious movements come together. Of course, October 7th changed so many things just in the psyche of the Jewish mind, of the Israeli mind would be better, knowing that the world hates them and they have to come together. So I think the young person is seeing this unity in many ways. And of course, there's the religious element, all these things that cannot be happened really from a human perspective, they're attributing it to the God of Israel.
Indeed, I don't think it's an accident as we watch all of these different things developing regarding Israel and everything that you're talking about. We've known for years the Temple Institute has been training priests, and they have all of the necessary instruments ready to go to be able to begin the temple services as soon as they have a place to do that, and the desire to build a temple. And I would guess the blueprints are already done.
Oh, yeah.
I would think there's even prefabricated walls and things that are ready. I would just assume there is. You know, people prefabricate houses out here. I'm thinking with the zeal of certain people over in Israel, there's probably some certain other things that are ready to go too, not just the instruments and the priests, probably the whole thing. I would think when they're given the green light to build a temple, they're not going to have to go through a lot of red tape. It's pretty much a done deal.
Yep, I actually was. There was a gentleman down in Dallas who is kind of knows Netanyahu, and I was interviewing him on this, and he said, "You want to see the plans for the temple?" And I go, "Well, yeah." And he had them in his office. He had a copy of it, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, you know, people talk about how of course, the stones, you know, of the temple can't be heard in the land or around the Temple Mount. So stones are being built in other places. They're being quarried. As we know, they often try to take a cornerstone up and drive it up onto the Temple Mount. And they get turned around, you know, for years. So, and people, I think wisely, they'll talk about that if the time comes for permission to happen, that they'll build a tabernacle at first, and then they'll build something permanent around it or whatever in order to get the temple sacrifices and stuff up and running ASAP. Because we're talking about we're getting into the mindset of a religious Jew, not one who believes in Jesus, and in their mind, they need to follow God's commandments to Moses. And so that's why they love Moses. It's the Mosaic covenant that they're trying to reestablish for sure in the land of Israel, which includes, of course, all of the temple requirements and all the prescriptions that are given there in the Bible. So from their perspective, when many people ask him, well, why are you trying to build a temple? And they said, well, why are you asking a stupid question? Hashem told us to. What else? I mean, what else is there? He commanded it. We obey it. And you know what? I resonate with that total mentality. If Jesus commands us something, I don't question it. We just say, yes, sir, you're the Lord. Jesus said in Luke 6, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do the things that I tell you? So from their perspective, they're simply trying to follow the light that they have, which is Moses. They need Jesus. We know that. But Jesus, as you quoted, Jesus will return after they get, you know, in their distress, Hosea, right? In their distress, they will seek the Messiah. Hosea chapter 5.
Yeah, very interesting because we'll often hear pushback. I'm sure you get similar comments to me when you talk about the temple being built. Don't you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit and so forth? Listen, we get that. But to the non-believing Jew, the Jew doesn't believe in Jesus. No, they're going to build the temple. This is what the Bible does teach. In a specific 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, Antichrist, the lawless one, will sit in the temple and demand to be worshipped as God. It makes so much sense that the first thing that would happen, just get the tabernacle up there. The Jews were the Israelites worshiped in the tabernacle for a long time before a temple was ever built. Get that going, but sometime by the midpoint of the tribulation, there will be a temple that is going to be on the area of the Temple Mount. All right, I want to switch gears over to archaeology because it's just close to my heart. You studied archaeology actually in Israel. How would you say archaeology and the discoveries of these biblical things strengthen our prophetic confidence, and also for Jews themselves?
Oh, yeah, because we know there's two things that come to play, and one of them that we see in Isaiah 41, where God says, I guess, as it relates to prophecy, hey, look, gather all the gods. Let's go, bring them up. Let's have a little debate. Let's bring it to the court of law. And God says, let them speak the future. If they can speak the future, then you should fear them. But if they don't, then you need to fear me, because God is the only one in the midst of all the pagan gods or whatever, all the false gods. God's the only one that knows the future. And so he uses prophecy as a litmus test to knowing what words come from him and which words we need to obey. And so in the same way, when you look at archaeology gives so much confirmation of the reliability of the story. And, you know, one of the best examples, and as I'll share, when I was doing my archaeology in Gath, Tel Asafi, which is where Goliath is from, one of the guys there was a Mormon. he was from BYU, and he was a great archaeologist, actually. And I remember asking him, and I didn't want to do it in public, but I said, how do you handle this, where the Bible makes a lot of claims: history, money, characters, civilizations, land, geography. The Book of Mormon makes claims, all of those things in this land, in the Americas. I said, how do you handle the difference between the archaeology in the land of Israel is everywhere? Everywhere. You can't dig anywhere. You can't build a house. You can't build a road, a building, which doesn't provide some level of archaeological artifact that pops up out of the ground and provides a level of context or confirmation for the historicity and the reliability of Scripture. I said, nothing has been found in America that corroborates the story, the narrative of the Book of Mormon. And he just said, well, I just focus on Israeli archaeology. And it was interesting that he recognized the discrepancy. And so, even though as much as the Latter-day Saint movement has tried, there's been so much development over all of the United States now, even to the Hill of Cumorah in New York, which is the home base for the golden plates. None of it. But if you look again at Israel, you can't dig anywhere without something coming up. Yeah. There could not be a better contrast to understanding how archaeology confirms the reliability of the historical narrative, which ultimately provides the reliability of the gospel narrative, and what Jesus said about himself, about going back to Abraham, David, the United Kingdom, all the way to the divided kingdom, all the way up to the story of Jesus in the Second Temple period. It's all there, which to me is phenomenal in us trusting in the reliability of Scripture.
I just absolutely love archaeology. I love going there. I love talking to you about it. I mean, we try to tell people, listen, go to Israel.
Yes.
You don't have AI fakes. Everything's real. You can actually touch this stone. You go into Magdala, here is the synagogue. Or in Capernaum, you see the house of Peter. You start looking at these things. You actually step back in time to the day of Jesus, or to the day of David, or even to the time of Abraham, whatever it is. You actually step right into the story, and you're looking, going, you can touch it with your hands. Your feet are on it, or the Temple Mount, the southern steps. I tell people, go there. The Sea of Galilee is a real sea. Well, it's a big lake, actually, by our terms, or a huge lake by California terms, a small lake where you come from. But I have 3 rapid-fire questions as we wrap up here for you, Mondo. Here they are. Ready? If you had to identify the 3 most significant prophetic developments happening in the world right now, what would they be and why?
I would say that all the stuff we've been talking about, the whole red heifer, third temple, the entire third temple movement, 100%. No doubt, I would say that as we watch the prophetic development of Iran and Turkey's threatening right now that they want Jerusalem back, to return it to the caliphate. All that is functioning exactly as we would anticipate the alliances. And we've seen pictures of Erdogan, of Putin, of Iran, well, Khomeini, depending on the leader. We've seen pictures of that. That's straight out of Ezekiel 38. So that's not changing for sure. And I would say that the third thing, that the prophetic development that is really it's never going, we're past the point of no return, really is the development of artificial intelligence. We know, we've talked a long time about how an Antichrist figure in a globalist New World Order empire would be able to do what Revelation 13 describes, of him being able to enforce marks and for economic reasons and tracking and surveillance, and just being able to control as a dictator the world. And that was relatively impossible without what we understand now, the technology, and I would say artificial intelligence, and how that's going to help provide the ability to surveil everything and to implement all of what it takes.
Yeah, excellent. I actually had a couple of questions along those lines for you, but we ran out of time. But those are huge points, and couldn't agree more. And by the way, everybody, don't forget, Mondo, check him out at Prophecy Watchers. Outstanding. I love what you're doing there. And also your book, Mystery of the Red Heifer. How can people get that?
Yeah, they can certainly get it at prophecywatchers.com if they want to support us, or they can go to Amazon and
If you
get
want
it there as well.
if you want to support Bezos, go to Amazon. If you want to support Prophecy Watchers, go to prophecywatchers.com. And everybody know I don't get a single penny for having Mondo on today and promoting his book. Not one penny. So anyways, great program today. As always, Mondo, I'm looking forward to seeing you soon, wherever soon may be. Always a blessing. And tell my friends over there at Prophecy Watchers I said hi.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
God bless you, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow.